Hi, my friend. It's Doreen, and it's Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific. So that means it's time for Melissa Dougherty and I to chat about leaving the New Age and going into Christianity, as we both did. Usually we have someone we're interviewing, and today, actually, our special guest is Melissa. A lot of people, you love her, but you might not know much about her. She is the author of the great book that I recommend called From New Age to Christianity Recovery. And also she runs a support group by that name on Facebook, although it's almost full. So if you apply to it, don't take it personally if you don't hear back from her for a while. It's very intensive group. She's available to chat, however, on Instagram, and in the YouTube description, I put her Instagram profile name. So Melissa's going to talk to us about her story, her testimony about the New Age, and what was her conversion like and what she's learned since then. So will you please join me in welcoming our good friend, Melissa Dougherty. Hi, sister. How are you?
I'm good. It's kind of weird because we're the ones doing the interviewing most of the time, and now here we are, on the other end of it. But
well, it's good for people to know who you are,
yeah,
know your background. A lot of people are aware of my story, but they don't know you. And people still ask me if you're a Jehovah Witness minister. from the first couple of videos we did where you said you're ministering to.
Yeah, and we've made it clear in a few videos, but that will kind of give a little bit more background on how that all happened.
But just to clarify, Melissa's not a Jehovah Witness.
No, I'm not a Jehovah's Witness. No, I think it's funny because people don't quite understand how you and I met and how they're like, oh, how'd you get this gig? And I'm like, no, it didn't work that way. I mean,
well, we'll talk about that story. It's quite a story. It should be a movie of the week, actually.
Yeah.
Let's talk about who Melissa Dougherty is, your background. You grew up with parents who had a particular spiritual slant, right?
Yeah, it was my mom. My dad wasn't really around a lot, so he at most is maybe agnostic. But he had pretty much no spiritual, effect there at all on us growing up. It was my mom, so we grew up with my mom. I grew up I'm in New Mexico. So, I mean, I've been here basically my whole life. I spent a good 7 years in Oklahoma, Perry, Oklahoma for a while, but this is my home. And, it was basically being surrounded by a constant teachings about love. All is love. God is love. It was very pantheistic. I didn't know there was a word for it. I had no idea it was New Age, nothing like that. So in that sense, it was my mother who had the biggest spiritual influence on me growing up. Yeah, for sure.
And like me, there was some Christian Science influence also. Is that correct?
Yeah, my mom. Okay, so my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother were Christian Scientists. So it's packed away. I have my great-grandmother's Christian Science book. I refer to it sometimes for research reasons, but it's not in my home. But yes, there was a lot of influence from, how the mind works, metaphysical teachings, things like that, that kind of seeped into my mom's way of thinking. But my mother had a very come one, come all kind of belief system in that sense. She didn't believe that there was just one way, and it was just very metaphysical. And she had a lot of experiences growing up too that she could not explain. I was fascinated with them when I was a child. I had so many questions for her. And so there was this fascination for the supernatural because of it. And I wanted that. And I'm sure anybody watching can kind of understand that there's this almost addiction to experience that we have. It gives you a rush, whenever you have that stuff happen, so for her, she still has things happening, but, she, would talk about seeing auras. She would talk about seeing, she calls it her visitor, which sounds creepy, but she used to think it was her spirit guide, and it wasn't a very nice visitor though. So I always wondered why she thought it was a good thing that this thing visited her,
Do you think it was a demon?
Oh, in hindsight, absolutely. Yeah, this thing was not a good spirit.
Mm-hmm.
But she didn't think that it could be bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, she was like how I used to be. Everything in the spirit world is good.
Yeah, and if it was bad, I mean, it would be very obvious to her.
Mm-hmm.
So for her, she thought it was just, she literally believed that she was on a higher spiritual plane.
Right.
She believed that she had spiritually progressed more than most people.
Thought she was awakened.
Yeah, basically. Mm-hmm. So whenever she's talking about people who have, lower energy or lower vibration, however she put it, mm-hmm. To her, it was just that she had awoken to a higher spiritual plane. Mm-hmm. So, and it wasn't said in a prideful way. I don't think she meant it like that, but this was my foundation of spiritual beliefs growing up. And Jesus was talked about all the time. He was just talked about as the example of what we could be. In other words, divine,
So the belief in Jesus from a Christian science standpoint, from a New Age standpoint?
It's a salad bar belief system. Mm-hmm. It was like you took things from each belief system and you kind of just made up. It was like there was truth in all of it. And there were many, many paths to God. Everybody had their own belief system. And that was their way of believing in God. And it wasn't wrong. There was not right or wrong religion. There was not right or wrong beliefs. It was your way is your path. And that is fantastic.
Okay, so very universalism then.
Yeah, basically. All these words, I didn't have any idea that there was words for any of this. I just thought it was just higher spiritual paths.
Did you go to church growing up, or?
Yeah, of course, my grandmother went to the Christian Science church. My mom, we went to Presbyterian church for a while, but after a while, we just never went. I have some memories of church, but we did not go every week. It wasn't something that we did all the time.
What about reading the Bible or Bible stories?
No. Mm-hmm. I remember I'd have questions about certain things, but we didn't have that very much. It was always just a very, the Celestine Prophecy was a big book with my mom because she used to see things, and she's like, there's people out there that have experiences like me, and of course she had questions about that. So for her, books like that were kind of opened and taught about. And the Bible was there, and she read from it sometimes, but it was never from a contextually biblical perspective,
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. Did you guys pray together at all, or was it more like a New Age affirmations kind of prayers?
Yeah, we did not pray very much. It was, for her, I remember us being taught visualization was a type of prayer.
Right.
So
that's
whenever
what I grew up with too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was very much about the way you thought, the way you feel. You were basically putting out energy to that aspect of what you were doing. You were taking a piece of the universe, kind of rearranging it and putting it back out there in a way. Prayer was looked at as an energy thing, basically. Yeah.
Co-creation and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sounds familiar. And you have a sister too, a sister who was raised that same way. Is she younger than you, or are you the oldest?
I am the middle child. I have an older sister, and then I have a younger sister. Okay. My younger sister is, she has a lot of background into my ministry, my ex-New Age ministry. She was in a New Age, left, and there's a whole story behind that, and then went back in. So, yeah. I'm the middle child.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's talk about how you segued from, it's kind of a new thought upbringing, and how you segued you got real into the law of attraction and other parts of New Age. And how did that happen?
Well, we have always had those beliefs growing up. I remember sitting down and we'd sit, my mom would say, okay, we really need a house. I need you guys to visualize and put this out there of what we need. Do it a few times a day as if you have it. And these are things I grew up with. So whenever, the law of attraction became a thing, when I became an adult, I'm like, oh, this is not new. This is stuff that I was taught. And it was amazing to me at the time because I thought, yes, it's a spiritual awakening. This is amazing. And I really, really started embracing these new thought beliefs after before I had my first child. I do have two children, an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old. So however old my child is basically how long I've been out of the New Age.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I really started embracing that, the ego, the teachings of Eckhart Tolle, all these teachings about, the mind, metaphysical beliefs. It wasn't really New Age. It was more New Thought. I was never really into crystals. I was never into like angel numbers or tarot cards or anything like that. Yoga, nothing. It was more about my inner divinity. And it was more about my thoughts, my feelings, things like that, the spiritual aspect of that. And then I just mixed it with Christianity without knowing there was a difference in that aspect.
Or that they're opposites.
Yes. And yeah, it kind of seeps itself in there together because there's New Thought Christianity. That's a thing.
No,
where
that's an oxymoron.
It is. It's like you think you call yourself a Christian, but you have these New Age, New Thought beliefs, and you're just mixing them together because these spiritual teachers talk about Jesus, and they talk about, how Jesus did like A Course in Miracles. That's a great example.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Let's just say right here that Course in Miracles, that's not from the real Jesus.
No, it is not. And but that's my point, is that it's a perverted Jesus, but you think that it's just basically a higher form of Christianity. It's taking what religion kind of dumbed down and making it into this what it was meant to be, a higher spiritual belief, basically, in that sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So you have 2 daughters and a husband named Nick.
Yeah.
And you guys all go to church together. You're fully Christian now.
Yes, I am a fully devoted Christian follower of Jesus.
Let's take that arc then. So you were really into your New Thought upbringing, your own divinity, self-help, and kind of throwing Jesus in there like seasoning on a recipe, not the main course. And so how did you get from there to where you are right now, doing Christian ministry for people?
Well, it's kind of a long story. Maybe we should put my link to my testimony down there too, but my testimony is twofold. And I have a YouTube channel. I don't do much with my YouTube channel, but I do have my testimony there. And it tells the story of how I basically became a Christian and just stayed ignorant. Like, I didn't read my Bible. I didn't really go to church a lot. I relied a lot on feelings and experience. That was how I thought I was growing close to God. I had a lot of questions that nobody could really answer. And so these beliefs that I basically grew up with kind of melded together with my current beliefs. I had a very big come to Jesus moment when I was 16. That's when I became a Christian. That's a long story. Again, you can listen to the testimony if you'd like. It radically changed my life. I literally was suicidal one night, planning my own suicide, to waking up the next day just an absolute different person. I will never forget waking up and just sitting up in my bed, just putting my knee up, looking around, just feeling peace and wholeness, and never read a page of the Bible, so I didn't really understand what was happening to me. It was the new birth. I was a new creation. I was born again. I felt like amazing. And I remember just thinking, wow, the sun's shining. I hear the birds chirping. I love being alive right now. And I had this burning desire, this hunger to know God more. I wanted to read my Bible. I had so many questions. It just, and you can understand that. Like when you become a Christian, it's just, he wants you to ask these questions. He wants you to learn more about him. It's a hunger.
Yeah, hungry for the word.
Yes. It's just, that's the biggest thing, was the hunger, and it never went away. I still have it all these years later. I was 16. I am 34 now. So that is never gone away.
Nice.
But, and when I was 16, it was what, 2001? And it just, the internet wasn't what it was. Facebook wasn't around. I remember having encyclopedias still in my house.
Right.
It was just hard to get information. And I had tough questions. I always call myself a Thomas because I'm kind of a skeptic. I'm like, I don't know about that, and I would ask question on question on question. And I needed somebody who had a really good foundation in Christian faith and could answer these questions. And that wasn't around. Apologists, if they were around, I didn't know them. An apologist, for those of you who may not know, it's from 1 Timothy. It's a word, apologia, for how to defend the Christian faith, and it helps answer those hard questions. So time goes on, years go by. I don't get these questions answered. I slowly go back into these New Age, New Thought beliefs, and I basically took certain Bible scriptures and mixed it together with, at the time, I didn't realize it was just New Thought beliefs, like the law of attraction, ask, seek, knock. As very metaphysical beliefs. I believe that there were books missing from the Bible, which is why I never read it. I had a hard time understanding the Bible. I had questions, so many things. And I just relied, again, a lot on my feelings and experience. I had a attitude of that I knew more than most people, even though I had no idea. It was like a pride feeling. In hindsight, it was. And then that all changed when I had my first child, because I still had all these questions and no idea how to answer them. And this is the really condensed version. Well, I'm just happy-go-lucky in my New Thought beliefs, wondering, and the questions I had were the basic ones, like, why does God allow evil and suffering? What's up with the Bible? Like, are there books missing? What's going on here? All the questions that we all have. Every person has the same questions. And I didn't pray very much, hardly ever. And so one day, I have this little child in my house, a little baby. I hear a knock on my door, and I go in to answer it, and there are two nice Jehovah's Witnesses behind the other side. And in hindsight, it's funny because I thought that I had used the law of attraction to bring them to me. Because I'm like, oh, these people are going to teach me the Bible. No. And again, I had no idea. I thought all religion in Christianity was like the same thing. I thought we all believed in the same thing, just in different ways. Kind of like, oh, you choose to express yourself that way and dye your hair this color. Oh, well, all right. This is just how the Jehovah's Witnesses choose to worship God. No, it's just not how that worked. So I answered the door, I invite them in. And the first few times was fine. I sat down with them. I remember being kind of frustrated because they couldn't answer my questions right then and there. It was always go bring back Watchtower magazines, which I'm like, no, like I want to have a conversation, and around the fourth visit, I knew something was wrong. And again, I'm not very knowledgeable in the Bible, very little Bible knowledge, but I thought I knew a lot. I really didn't. There were deal breakers in that sense, where I thought I had heard rumors about what they believed. Then I'm like, no, there's no way they believe that. And one of them was that Jesus was Michael the Archangel. And I'm like, no, Jesus is not Michael the Archangel. They don't believe that. They don't. That's not true. It's a rumor. So around the fourth visit, one of the women, they get up to leave. And she's like, well, next week we'll talk about how Jesus is Michael the Archangel. And I'm like, whoa, hold on, hold the phone. Wait a second. Hold on. And I felt the Holy Spirit for the first time in years, just don't say a word. Get them out. Go research. Go research. And I was kind of, my head was spinning a little bit, so I get them out. And the first thing I do, I put my daughter down to her nap, and I go to the Watchtower's worst enemy, which is the internet. They don't like it when people research. They don't allow them to go on the internet and research. So I do, and I spend hours and hours and hours and hours just researching this religion. It was a total snowball effect. And I found dozens and dozens of ministries that reach out to Jehovah's Witnesses. Either they're ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and they're ratting out the Watchtower, you know, and they're giving all the information of why it's not biblical, you know. They expose them, basically. I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. Like, how did I not know this? But more so than that, there were certain beliefs I held at the time that I had challenged. And that is really when it unraveled for me. Was I was going on a blog, and I was really nervous to click on this blog because it was saying something bad about a well-known spiritual teacher. And I'm like, how could anybody say anything bad about this man? He is loving and he speaks this. How could they? So I was a little offended, but I wanted to see what they had to say. So I went on the blog, and it changed my life because it was talking about how we are godlike, that we are divine. And it was just one sentence from a blog. I don't even know this man's name. I don't know why he said it. It was just a comment. And he said, well, you will be as God. Well, sounds like a slimy serpent to me. And I'm like, oh, it is the serpent's lie. And I'll never forget that. Just sitting back in my chair, I fell for that. Like, how could I have not known? And it's a long story, but I just started researching. I started looking in places that I never allowed myself to look before, because now I felt like I was getting to know who Jesus really was because of the Jehovah's Witnesses, because they came to my door, challenged my beliefs. I had no idea what I believed. And they'll get you in a doctrinal chokehold if you do not know your Bible. These people, they will come in and they will absolutely talk you under the rug. I mean, they know their beliefs very well, but ironically, they don't know the Bible very well. So what happened was that I basically got a spiritual calling to go into Jehovah's Witness ministry, which means I am a Christian who opens my door to them and tries to witness the gospel to them, and Mormons. It's not just Jehovah's Witnesses. It went over to Mormons too. And again, it's a long story. There's more detail in my testimony video on how that all happened. But I will never forget sitting back in my chair, just in utter awe and humiliation that what I had believed in, I didn't know there was a word. It was basically New Thought, New Age beliefs. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, just how could this happen? No, this isn't true. How could this happen? Just researching it, thinking, oh my word, the Jesus that I believed in is not the Jesus of the Bible. And I remember being so humbled because I was a Christian. I was just a very ignorant one. I remember being born again. I had that experience, but it got dragged through the mud. I did not read my Bible. I was not spiritually responsible in that sense. So here we are now. And all these years go by. I am in ministry, and it's hardcore ministry. Whenever you are in a ministry that reaches out to other religious beliefs, like Jehovah's Witnesses or Mormons, and you're trying to teach them, because you open your door to them, and they teach a different gospel. It's a different Jesus. It's a different gospel, and you're challenging them. there came a point where I kind of had to face my New Age past, and what happened is that my sister, she calls me up one day and she kind of did what I did. Tell me it's not true. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And she's like, just tell me that the New Age is not demonic. Please tell me that this is all a lie. And I'm like, what happened to you? I didn't do anything. I didn't say any. I've tried to have conversations with her before, but nothing quite got to her, like something she was researching on the internet. Something came up and she was just, what? That's not true, is it? And she, it's a snowball effect. So she calls me and I'm like, yeah, it's true. And so we have this really hard conversation. She's crying because she was in it way, way deeper than I was. And we have this conversation. We continue to talk. And at the time, again, I'm in this ministry to Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons and things like that. And I noticed that there's no groups. There's lots of support groups for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and ex-Mormons that have come out that have these questions, and there's a support system, but there's none at the time for ex-New Agers. So I made one. And this kind of rolls over into how you and I met.
Yeah, we should probably just go ahead with that story. Since it's natural segue.
Yes, this is a natural segue. 2015 is when I made this group. And it was very, very slow. And it was kind of sad because my sister did kind of end up leaving. She kind of got sucked into the crazy, wild world of conspiracy theories. And it ate her alive. And she's just kind of still, I'm kind of still not really knowing where she's at, if I'm honest. But I still talk to her. Spiritual conversations are here and there, but they don't go very well. So I don't argue, so I kind of, you got to test those waters. You got to be very purposeful about when to bring that up. But she left the group, but sometimes people would come in and join, but just not much conversation. Nothing was going on. And in 2017, it was the end of July, beginning of August, I went to close my group. I was on my computer, and I'm like, I looked up how to close down a group, everything. They're like, oh, well, you take out each member and then you archive it. And I'm like, okay. Or archive and then take out the members, whatever. And so I did it. I had my finger over the archive button. I was about to close my group.
Wow.
And then I stopped and I kind of leaned back and I'm like, you know what, Lord, hold on. And I'm like, I'm going to pray about this first, which was very wise.
Thank you.
Yeah. This is how Doreen and I met.
Because I was already a member of that group.
You were this is what I remember, the exact day that you joined my group. What happened is that I prayed about it and I said, Lord, if you're going to do something with this group, this is your group. Do it. Mm-hmm. It's not very smart to put a time limit on God, but I didn't really do that. I just said, if you're going to do it soon, because I'm going to close it. And he knew. What was that, beginning of August? August 14th. No, it was before then. It was about a week or two, maybe. It was around that time when you joined my group.
Because I joined it by myself, and you and I had a chat about the oils in the Bible, in the Old Testament.
Yeah, I had a question about it or something. Yeah. And because you joined the group, and then all of a sudden, it was like 80 members in the group. It was very small. Yeah. And all of a sudden, members that never said anything, never posted anything, messaged me, and they're like, oh, Doreen Virtue's in our group. And I'm all, who's Doreen Virtue?
Here I thought I was anonymous in the group.
Yeah, no, you were not. To me, you were. Yeah. And to this day, people still think it's silly that I never knew who you were. I didn't have a clue, which really helped.
Yes.
Yeah. So I kept asking them, I'm like, who's Doreen Virtue? I'd get a message the next day. I'm like, who's Doreen? I don't know who this woman is. So I finally Googled you, and I'm like, oh, Doreen Virtue is somebody. So I'm like, all right, well, Doreen Virtue's in my group, whatever. And conversations go on. It wasn't huge. It was just really slow. And I remember you were very hungry. You were very you were seeking companionship. You wanted people that you could relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah, at the time, I didn't really know.
I would just have conversations with you and Taz. I don't remember anyone else in the group ever talking with me. You and Taz would talk to me.
Yeah, and I remember I asked a question about oils or something, and just real small group. And then it's a long story, but you made a separate group that turned into a train wreck. And
yeah, for some reason, because your group just it wasn't, active enough. I thought, well, I'm just going to make my own group. And I announced it on social media, and there was like 3,000 people in there. And I opened it with another woman I had met, and I don't want to in any way put her down, but I at that time thought all Christians thought alike. And it was really eye-opening to me to see that we had very different theological beliefs that were the undoing of the group. And she would get really mad at me for posting things from gotquestions.org or what the final thing that happened was that Taz Bright in your group, because I was
he's one of my admins.
Yeah, he's so amazing. He had written this beautiful blog about why it's important to go to church. And so I just copy and pasted it in my group. And that's when everything there was like a nuclear explosion in my group, because some of the people in the group wanted to go to church and the other people were just like anti-church because they'd been hurt in church. And so it just melted down the church. So I just said, okay, you guys, we're just going to all go over to Melissa's now.
Yes.
So we all showed up at your doorstep.
That was
like
August
1,500 people or 1,000 people, like in one day, right?
Yeah, and I had to actually, the membership is different now. Like how we have a vetting system now because we've learned a lot this last year. So it's a very fruitful group. That was August 14th when that happened, because you invited people over into the group, and what was happening, what the big thing was, is that you were seeking. I make a joke that it was like I was your blanket for it, like we just kind of, like, I don't, you needed support. And that's what the group was for. And I remember messaging you saying, hey, so I don't know half these people. Do you want to admin with me? So we became friends. That's how we became friends.
Right.
And then shortly after that, you took a break from social media, which was very wise. And long story short, we just kept in touch.
Yeah.
And we became really close. And just, it's been great ever since. Like, we just gotten closer and closer since last year. And that's how we became friends, and
you need support. Like, I mean, I have a lot of Christian friends, but the people who come from New Age really understand you.
Yes, and that's the point of it too, is that if you come into that's the other reason for making the group, is nobody understood. How was I supposed to explain that I had believed that Jesus was, how was I supposed to explain that I used to believe that every religion believed in the same thing, just in different ways. And it was just, there was an element of understanding that goes whenever you've been there. And the people in the group, that's what it was designed for, was for support and recovery, but also discipleship and shepherding, which is fancy for, hey, you can ask any questions here, and we're going to help you answer it. We're really big about apologetics, which is, again, answering those difficult questions. So when you leave the New Age, when I did, one of the reasons why I have a saying where people come out of New Age and kind of go into New Thought, where they think they're leaving New Age and I became a Christian. But a lot of the beliefs that you think are Christian are metaphysical beliefs about Jesus. And
they call it word of faith.
Yeah, there's word of faith, which is a whole other story.
Yeah.
And it was, we want to prevent that. We want to be like a group that allows people to ask these questions, to really help them learn their Bible. It does take a little bit of work. So we try our best to kind of work together with people that are coming in who do have these questions. But it's hard sometimes. Like, you need support to understand the Bible. And that's really what the group is designed for. It's for the ex-New Ager who is coming into Christianity, who need support, love, and growth, the ability to grow. And you're right, we're not going to close the group. For what's happening is the admins and I decided there's going to be a point where we're going to have a member limit just for a little bit. And the reason why is that we want to have this group where we can really disciple them and shepherd them and really focus on them. Because I find that the more people that come in, it's like you find this repetitive nature.
Yeah.
It's like you get this group, answered questions, and then a whole other group comes in, and then you got to start over again. And
well, that's why you made your book, right? You have your book there.
Yes.
So you hold it up and
and From New Age to Christianity, you can get this on Amazon. I don't make anything from this. It's for your pleasure of reading. It's informative. This book is answering commonly asked questions for people who have left the New Age that I kept finding were asked over and over and over again in the group. Doreen, you were the one who had the idea. She's like, you should condense this in a book. And I'm like, that's genius. So I did. I took all of the questions that I could. It was my first attempt at even trying to make a book of any kind. And Doreen, you helped me a lot with that, and that was really cool. And I'm thinking about kind of updating it at some point, but this is a really good go-to for people who do have these questions. And when we do these videos every week, we also have books to recommend to people that can, that they can read when they come out of New Age. These commonly asked questions. I have a lot on my shelf. Lee Strobel, he's a big one, and J. Warner Wallace. You got these apologists, which again, people who answer these questions, who make a living. They devote their life to teaching people how to defend their faith. By answering these questions. A lot of beliefs in religions don't do that. They don't allow a lot of these questions. Christianity, God's like, no. If it's true, if it's the truth, it will stand on its own. Bottom line. So that's kind of the motto that I have.
That makes sense. So I'm muting my mic in between because my dogs are making a lot of noise. And so
I love your puppies though.
Yeah. So let's just segue for a moment into your artwork, because on your Instagram page you show a lot of the art that you make. For my birthday, you made me this beautiful painting of breaking free of the chains of darkness, and so that really speaks to your soul, doesn't it? I think it's part of your ministry, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of funny how that all happened. I am a semi-professional artist, which means that I don't make a full living from my art, but I make somewhat of a living from it, I should say. I've only been painting for 4 years, and how it started was after I had my second child. I went through a really dark time. It was tough. Like, it was in my entire Christian life. That was the darkest time in my Christian life. It was bad. And part of the reason why it was so hard was because I just brought home this baby. My oldest was having some issues with it. It was just, I was struggling. And it was December 2014. And my friend Shannon comes over, my friend Shannon. Her and I go to church together. I go to a local church here. And me and her have been through a lot together, spiritually speaking. Well, she comes over one December to give me a gift, and I unwrap it. And it's this little teeny tiny, like small-sized 8x10 painting of just this beautiful yellowish sky, a little foreground and 3 crosses. Simple. And I was shocked. How did you do this? And she's like, oh, it's just acrylic paint. And I'm like, that's acrylic? That looks easy. Like, I could do that. And I always was that kid. Like, in first grade, my first grade teacher always saw an artist in me. I didn't know my colors in first grade. Like, I was I struggled a lot as a kid in school. But my teacher, I remember her, she told my mom when we moved to Oklahoma, she's like, I've waited my entire career for a child like your child. Please don't go. She loved how I saw color. She loved how just my use of art. She saw the artist in me. Her name is Mrs. Lott, and I miss her. I'm going to track her down someday and explain to her that she really planted a seed of artists in me. But I've always had this in me where I just wanted to draw. I wanted to, do something with it, but I never knew what to do. I never knew how to do it. So Shannon comes in, she gives me that gift, and I go to Hobby Lobby. I spend $20 on cheap acrylic paint, an easel, and some brushes. And I went to the school of YouTube and learned a lot of technique. And I learned how to paint. And I got really good really fast. And after a while, people started asking for me to paint them things. And of course, as I first started out, I'm like, well, how do I price this stuff? What do I do? And so I started off really small. I remember my first painting was my first commissioned painting was a beach painting. It's a little tiny beach painting, and I charged $20. I'm like, that was a lot of money to me at the time. It was, I'm like, oh my gosh, I have 20 extra dollars. And I love, I'm Greek, and I love food. I think about food more than the average person probably. And there was a Trader Joe's down the road from my house. So I got that $20. I'm like, yes, grocery money. It was so funny. So after a while, people started asking more and more, can you paint this? Can you paint that? I'm like, yeah, I think I can. And I remember my piece that I did that I thought, oh, I could do this, was a portrait that I did of my oldest daughter. It's actually up here in my wall. You can't see it, but it was a black and white portrait of her. And when I got done with that, I looked back at it and I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going some. This is something, And so I started doing anything that people could ask. I've done everything from abstract to realistic and started making money off of it. And I sell my pieces in a local place down here. I do commissions. I have done it for a long time. There's something extremely peaceful about sitting down at my desk and painting. I feel at home. I feel very good when I paint. I love it.
And is prayer a part of your artwork also?
Yes. When I sit down and I paint, I have my music on. And I remember, Doreen, one time I was painting this piece, and a song came on. Crowder, I love Crowder. Their new CD is gold. If you don't listen to a lot of Christian music, you should. K-Love is a great radio station. Go online. Crowder is a good band. Their song, My Victory, came on. And even thinking about it now, it's just, when I'm painting and I'm listening to music and I'm worshiping my Lord, it's like nothing I've ever experienced. I'll lay on. I remember listening to that song, and I remember just stopping everything I was doing, putting the brush down, just laying on the floor and just worshiping God, listening to that song. And for the rest of the night, I remember tears were just coming down my face. I am not a crier, and most people that know me know that. But when it comes to God and the awe and the worship I have for that, for Him, for my God, it's real. And I remember listening for like an hour, just worshiping Him and praying to Him. And I have these moments while I paint. So whenever people get a piece of art from me, they literally get a piece of that. Especially my religious pieces, my spiritual pieces. It's like I pray over it, and I get to have that experience and that time with God while I'm putting a part of myself in this piece. It's beautiful. I love painting. I love it.
Well, I feel blessed to have one of your paintings, so thank you.
Yeah, I gave you one for your birthday.
Yeah, that was beautiful. Very powerful. I want to ask you a question. If you could describe what you love about Jesus.
Where to start? What's not to love? I mean, God became a human being to take my sin. One of the things that always brings me to my knees, that absolutely puts it all in perspective, is that um, the fact that he cares so much for us and me and you and everybody, that he would become us, one of us, and die a torturous, horrible death, take on our sin. For what? You know, like for love. Absolutely. Like he loves us so much. And there's this awe that that gives me. And the perfect love that he has, it's unconditional. He loves us all. And oh, the balance that he has. That was one thing when I left the New Age. I had a really imbalanced view of love. It was just, thou shalt not be negative, right? And when I kind of did what you did, where I started reading the Bible, and I'm like, oh dang, Jesus has got some words for these Pharisees. He's not very nice to them sometimes, you know? And I'm like, if God Almighty can put his foot down and, you know, give the Pharisees a good tongue lashing and righteous anger, I'm like, well, what does that look like? What does that mean to be balanced in your feelings? So there was some lessons that Jesus taught me about being emotionally intelligent, having good boundaries. And I there was one thing before we got on, we talked about this, but one thing about me is I'm actually quite the introvert. Um, I don't seem like it, but I am. I love intelligent conversations. I'm a thinker. I love being by myself, which makes it difficult with kids. So I really have to find time for myself. If I could, I mean, I can sit down at 3 hours at a canvas and paint and be perfectly at home. But I actually struggled a lot with anxiety. And in college, I went to college. I have my degree in liberal arts and early childhood multicultural education. I have 2 degrees. I'm going back for my bachelor's this next year. But one of the classes that I took was a public speaking class. And at the time, I was mortified. I'm like, no, this is not going to work. But one of the things that happens when you become a Christian, and one of the things that God does with you, is he sanctifies you. And one thing I love about Jesus is that he is not an instant gratification God. He will work you like a piece of clay, and that takes time. And all sanctification is a fancy word for slowly bringing you little by little into the person he wants you to be. And that class was a turning point for me, because he taught me how to be confident. Because what happens is that once you accomplish something and you're like, oh, wow, I can do this, all of a sudden it gets easier little by little. And that was a big turning point, because then I realized I'm well-spoken. I can speak in front of a crowd and not get nervous. How did that happen? Because of confidence. Like I realized that people listened to what I had to say. They liked what I had to say. And I'm kind of funny sometimes. So I'm like, all right, well, I can do this, you know, and I was 19 at the time. I'm 34 now. So looking back then to where I'm at now, oh, and then getting into ministry with Jehovah's Witnesses, or to them, I have lots of YouTube videos that I had to make. I taught Christians how to witness to them, and it's on another channel. But these videos, I had to learn how to speak. I had to learn how to teach, and I had to learn how to listen. So there's
And
things like that where
with criticism too, right?
yeah, yes, criticism. Yes, that's the other thing. I'm really glad you brought that up. Because one of the biggest things I struggled with after leaving the New Age is people were really mean.
Mm-hmm. You mean
Espe-
the New Agers that you knew before, they were mean because you became a Christian?
Well, I didn't actually have a lot of New Age friends. It was online.
Oh, the online people. Mm-hmm.
Well, in the ministry.
Yeah.
And there were some people in my life that were less than nice, but I don't think I'll go into detail with that. But the issue is that when I started that ministry, can you hear me?
It just dropped.
Oh, hold on. I think my Bluetooth just went off. Hold on.
Okay. All right. Well, I saw some of the comments that you got when you were making your witnessing videos for Jehovah Witnesses, and people were calling you just horrible cuss word names.
Yeah, it was bad.
And so those
coming out,
who were those people who were cussing at you? Were they weren't Jehovah Witnesses?
Yeah, they were. Yeah, they were.
Well,
and some of them were ex-Jehovah's Witnesses that were atheists.
Atheists makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, and then a lot of them were active Jehovah's Witnesses, though. Well, let me say this, though. I love Jehovah's Witnesses, especially Mormons. When they walk up my door, I'm like, yes, the Mormons are here. They're nice. They're loving. They'll like mow your lawn for you and bring you cookies. I mean, they're just, and they don't even care sometimes if you disagree with them. They just love talking to you. I love Mormons. So yeah, there's this definite love in my heart that I have for them. But yeah, online it got brutal, and they were mean, especially because I'm a woman, you know, and you're teaching and stuff. And but let me tell you, it really. I remember nights crying myself to sleep. Like, it was bad. And the anxiety was awful. It made me want to quit ministry. I'm like, this is not good. Yeah. I remember just waking up with a cloud over my head, just not wanting to go outside. I remember shaking. I remember just having a pit in my stomach, anxiety. But then something happened. I got support. You know, it's so essential whenever you're leaving a high control religion or anything that you're doing in ministry, that you get support. One reason for the group. Because then you realize, oh man, people got my back. We're in this together, you know? And then all of a sudden you can swap stories, and it becomes a very lighthearted thing after a while when somebody shows you contempt, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, you've really helped me with that too. I just want to say that Melissa's offered me so much support. Because I'm super sensitive and recovering people pleaser, codependent. And so when I've been hammered, you know, really cruelly by people who are upset by my conversion for this or that reason, Melissa's been there to really hold my hand through it. So thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, I've been there. Yeah, I think, people pleasing. That's one big thing that we had to learn to kind of get over.
Yeah, and become God pleasers.
Become God pleasers, exactly.
Yep.
But yeah.
So thank you. You've covered so much. What you said a few things of what's next for you. You're going to update your book. You're going back to school to get your bachelor's. Anything else that you're looking at that God's directing you to do?
Well, so I remember, I don't know, I was thinking about this week, and because ministry is so important. I know that it's not anything big. I mean, the biggest things that I want to do is update the book, possibly put another one together of ex-New Age testimonies come to Jesus. Yeah, that one's been on my heart for a while. I want to go back to school next year for my bachelor's in apologetics or biblical and theological studies, because my youngest will be in kindergarten at that time. And I mean, we plan on homeschooling at some point, but before middle school. So that'll give me some time to get that done. And I don't know. I think that, I mean, even on, like I said, I don't do much on my own YouTube channel, but I'm thinking of, you know, doing videos or answering theological questions there, because there's people in my group that asked theological questions that I could answer. And I'm like, you know what? I think I'm, you know, might address that some other way. I don't know. But that's basically it. Just enjoying the ride.
That's beautiful. Anything else that you'd like to share with us? Something maybe we don't know about you, or something that's on your heart?
Not that I could think of right off the bat.
Okay. Well, that's good. That means we covered a lot.
Yeah.
All right.
I think
Well,
that's it.
yeah, so every week we close with a prayer. Melissa, do you feel like you'd like to do the prayer today?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for this time together. It's always nice to have an opportunity to kind of, tell people about you and what you're doing in our life. And I pray, God, to anybody that's listening, that somehow you use anything that's said here to speak to them, to draw them near to you, to help them grow closer to you. And most of all, God, to really spark that hunger in them. I pray that your Holy Spirit speaks to them, that brings them closer to you. And let them know that they're not alone, Lord, that you love them, that you never promised an easy life, but you did promise that you would never leave us or forsake us. I pray, Lord, that whatever you're doing with me and Doreen in our lives in these videos, Lord, that you use for your glory and your will. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Well, I want to thank everyone for viewing this and remind you that through December of 2018, Melissa and I will be here every day, not every day, every Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific with a live video. And then I'm going on hiatus for 3 months from January through March, and then we'll be back in April and such. But in the meantime, we just want to let you know that we love you. We do not do these videos to judge anybody or to confront anybody. We're doing these videos because we wish someone had done these videos and we had seen them way back when. So please know that these all come from our heart, from a place of love and sistership to you all, because you guys, there's only two ways to go. You either follow God or you follow the devil. And who you follow in this world is who you follow in the next world. So you want to follow God to his home of heaven. You don't want to follow the devil to his home of hell, because eternity is a long, long, long time. That's not being negative. It's in the same sphere as if, God forbid, a truck was coming at you. And we said, there's a truck coming. We'd be coming from a place of love to say that. In fact, if we didn't say it, that wouldn't be loving. Right, Melissa?
Yeah, it's almost like, I don't know, Doreen, maybe you have the same feeling, but in my ministry to Jehovah's Witnesses, LDS, now, New Agers in the last few years, it's like your heart hurts for them. It aches. It loves them so much. And to the point where sometimes it's just, you get down on your knees and just pray and you can't stop. And it's just, there's this otherworldly love that Doreen and I have for you guys that it's hard to explain, but it's a godly love. And just like a parent would tell their child what they're doing isn't, I don't know, it's like God wants to tell you and tell you how to be saved. He loves you, and he uses people to get his messages across a lot of times, and so I really believe that, Doreen and I have this calling, and that's why we got to say it with truth and love. We cannot, I don't, when people do the whole, Bible bashing their Bible over the head kind of thing, and no, it has to be done with love, so Doreen's right. Like, there's a sense of pure, true love that we have for you guys, that we pray for you guys a lot. Every single day I pray for Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons, and New Agers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, thanks so much for sharing your background with us, Melissa. I feel like all of us got to know you a little bit better today. And of course, in the coming weeks and the videos, we'll see other parts of where your heart's at and what your ministry is about. And so we're looking forward to all the videos coming up. We have some amazing guests coming up. Woo-hoo!
I know, I'm excited.
Yeah. So we'll look forward to being with you again next Tuesday at 12 noon Pacific, right here on this YouTube channel. In the meantime, God bless you, and we'll see you next week.